Around the Ozarks is now on your FM radio. Listen to Around the Ozarks mornings with Grace Gooley as I spotlight local people, stories, and podcasts, all while playing the country legends of the 90s and the hit makers of the 2000s. It's on the Ozarks' best country, 105.1 The Bull.
Fishing's better when you share the experience. Meet new fishing partners through the Co-Angler app. Offer trips, request trips, connect with anglers in your area, and share the cost. Make every trip more affordable and more fun. Co-Angler, connecting anglers one trip at a time.
Welcome to Beyond the Gate, a podcast sharing the grit, growth, and spirit of rural life. From fields to front porches, this is where the heart of agriculture comes to life. Today we go beyond the gate again with our farmer, a veteran, our mechanic, a father, a husband, a sheriff. But as you might remember, we all know him as our most recent governor, the 57th governor of the great state of Missouri, Mike Parson. Thanks for joining us again.
Always great to be here, Jamie. Always good to be talking to you and telling stories.
Well, I could ask you so many more questions to learn about all those stories growing up. We started in Hickory County through the years of a young lad and mysteriously getting in trouble and growing up with his brothers to life in the military and what that led you to your first elected office as a sheriff, right, and running gas stations and well, okay, I was going to ask this before. We say gas stations. You've said service stations. We don't have service stations anymore. So, your first job in high school to your first business you owned. What was a service station?
Yeah, for the younger generation maybe out there to speak to. That's when we used to pump the gas, change oil, check the oil, wash the windshields, and you just were doing a complete service to make sure that the customer was happy and of what they were. And that's how you build up a self-service, not the self-service side of it, but the full service side of it. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I didn't get in trouble more than one time in a month of running my car a little too low, if I didn't have to do the pumping myself and get out and do that, I'd probably get gas more often. So maybe those full service need to come back into
Not
fashion.
Really, because my daughter had the same problem, and she even her dad owned a gas station. And,
she still ran out?
You'd
Okay.
be like her. You'd be in trouble most of the time because I'd always be getting on to her. I own a gas station. How can you possibly run out of gas or get close?
We get busy.
And there was never no good answer to that. So I'll just tell you right now.
Okay.
So don't look for no sympathy from me.
Well, dang. But I still think full service should come back.
I do too, but you also got to remember in my time, I was, in total denial that convenience stores will never make it.
Oh.
Too high, too pricey. People's not going to go there. They like people like me. Well, so much for that one. That wasn't one of my better thoughts.
Yeah, we do live in a world of convenience.
We do.
At least you didn't. At least that wasn't your campaign slogan for governor.
Yeah, right.
Go to the convenience stores. Okay, so we left off where you were a state representative representing Cedar? Hickory County.
Hickory. Polk County.
Polk County.
And Cedar County when I was a state rep.
State rep, okay. And you didn't finish that term. You had an opportunity to move up to state senate. That was a natural fit?
It was at the time, Delbert Scott was the senator then, and I thought a lot of Delbert, and he was a good friend, and got to learn a lot from him when I was up there, and he kind of took me under his wing and tell me a few things. And he was a senior senator at that time. I mean, he'd been around there a long time, and, he says, hey, you ought to consider running for Senate. So I thought, well, if I want to be up here, might as well be in the Senate. That's it's definitely a lot different than the House.
Let's talk. We know the basic, junior high history, Missouri governor, government lessons, but living in both offices, what is the main difference? How would you describe them to the layperson?
Yeah, well, I think there's 163 state reps, so you're kind of in just a big room. If not to offend them, but if you put it in layman's term, you kind of got like kindergarten, and then you go up to a little higher levels as a state senator. But I think when there's just 163 of you, leadership pretty well drives the train. So I mean, whoever's in leadership sets the agenda and everything. And then when you go to the Senate, you're one of 34 people, so everything matters then. So you have to have knowledge of every subject that comes in there, because at some point you're going to have to make a decision on it. So you're going from 163 down to 34.
Well, I think that comes, you talked about making a decision on anything that comes across the floor. The lessons you gave, you made a point to invest in. through your entire career prior to that had to have come into play, be important.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. And again, you had to have the ability. You still wanted to learn because there's so many different subjects. I mean, let's face it. From somebody like me, when I first go up there, I don't know anything about pharmacies. I didn't know anything about drugs. I didn't know anything about health care. I didn't know anything about the transportation system of the state of Missouri. And all of those different things that just wasn't part of your life that you have to have knowledge of when you go down there, and you had to make decisions, because especially in the education arena, there's just so many different layers of the education, whether it's the universities, the community colleges, the skill schools, or whether you're just talking about K through 12. And all of those things you had to learn. So it was good for me to have to do that. And again, I kind of enjoyed trying to learn about them. And then when you're a senator, just everybody's going to walk through your door asking you a question.
For something.
And it's okay.
Well, okay, so this is where I enter your life. This is where I met you. And you don't have to remember this, but I remember it. So I was part of the Missouri ALOT program, Missouri Ag Leaders of Tomorrow.
Okay.
And we were in Jeff City for one of our very first weekends gathering. It's a 2-year program where we move around the state and do an international trip. And so we're delved deep into Missouri agriculture. And we were tasked with your day at the Capitol. We were to reach out to our personal elected officials. And I had not lived in Lebanon many years, just 3 or 4 years, and you were my state senator. And I was living on a little border, so I'd reached out to all of mine in the area. And I don't know if I called or emailed your office. I don't remember. I think I probably emailed, because picking up the phone is hard and scary. Yeah. So I probably emailed you. And I didn't have a scheduled appointment with you. Your schedule's something I don't know, but we were up at lunch on one of the verandas up there, and you came and found me. And you took me on a tour of the Senate floor, and we got to chatting and spent some time with you that you had, and I got to skip some other things because I got to hang out with you, and that was my first real interaction with an elected official that more than hi and bye or shake hands. And I don't think, I look back and I was thinking as I was driving here today, what impact that had on me. Someone that found me, that took time to meet me, and interactions throughout the years were many since.
Right.
But I think that very first time was pretty cool. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. But one of the things I always tried to do is make it special for somebody. I mean, I got the honor of sitting in those seats or being in that position. And when sometimes somebody write me a letter, or like yourself, that you contacted me somehow personally, I would always think, if I was that person, how cool would it be if that person would come down and just say hello or speak to me or something like that. In my entire career, I did things like that. And as governor, it never stopped happening. I had a little girl one time that I had ice cream with. Gosh, she was 6 years old, cute as she could be, and she wrote a letter to the paper, I think somewhere down in West Plains, that's talking about that she was going to meet all the mayors in the state of Missouri. This was her main goal. And she tell this little girl, wrote it and everything, and she says, who knows, I may even meet the governor someday. So somebody sent that article to me.
Oh, wow.
And I have my staff, I said, you find out who that little girl was, and I want you to bring her up here, because I'm going to go have ice cream with her. And we brought her up here. Her and her parents come up. I remember, and I had the security team all put together, the sedans and everything. And
you took her to get ice cream?
Oh, she rode. She wanted to ride.
Gosh.
I said, you want your mom and dad to go, or you want to ride with them, and I'll meet you there? No, she said, I'll go with you. And she sat right there where the First Lady sits. And we went down to Central Dairy, and we had ice cream, and it's those little things that made so much difference. There's so many times, Jamie, of a morning I always walk to work, and somebody be looking at the Capitol, wandering around with their kids. And, of course, kids is always – I always said I like kids better than I do adults, and it's a proven fact I do. But anyhow, these kids be going, and I'd walk up to them, and I'd be joking, and be there. I says, hey, you guys know who the governor is up here? You ever met the governor? I said, oh, I never met the governor. I never met the governor, but they were real nice about him. I said, how would you like to see the governor's office? And they'd say, yeah, let's go. And the parents would go up there. And by this time, the parents are starting to think, I think that's him. So I take them upstairs. We go to the governor's office and have a little time, unannounced, always, and my staff would always be
Never
there,
know
like,
it.
what are you doing? But it's still special moments like that I think are just as much part of your job as doing some major bill signing.
Exactly.
So I'm glad it had a positive impression.
It did, and I think back to the opportunities I've had since to make a point to put my boots on the steps of the Capitol, to whether it was with Missouri Cattlemen's or Missouri Farm Bureau, or most recently with the Missouri Bankers Association, and the other hat that I wear, the importance of advocacy and the importance of making your voice heard, because there are people there listening. And so, cool story. My daughter, she's 6, and she's a kindergarten at Lebanon, and today she is at the state capitol advocating for before and after school funding for the SWARM program that we have, and that's a statewide, and it's a big issue that we need to think of but she was there was 2 kindergartners asked to represent Lebanon, and they've got kids from each grade, and she was there, and she says, "Mommy, I've been to the Capitol before." I said, "Yes, you've been there with Mommy and Daddy," and she's like, "What am I going to wear? I need a blazer," and I was like, "Oh, you don't have one, but you look very nice and professional in what you wear." But it was very important to her that she knew the importance of her being able to go today. So she is, as a 6-year-old, Ivy May is at her first advocacy mission at the Missouri State Capitol.
She's taking after her mother, I think.
I hope so. Well, hopefully in some good things and not all the other not so good things.
Good for her. Well, I hope she has a great day.
I can't wait to hear about it all.
One of the other things, she's speaking to her mate, reminded me of another kid that came in one time, and it was a young man, just what you're talking about. They were first graders or something. They was real young, but he had a sport coat on, a tie. He did. I mean, he was making the impression and stuff like that. And anyhow, and I didn't know who he was, but I later did. I knew, and I did know his parents at the time, but I did. And I said, "Man, you look so good today." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I'm dressed up because I knew I was coming to see the governor." That's right. So one of the things that is a little special that I didn't do it very many times because they're kind of expensive, but the lapel pins that the governor wears, they're only for the governor's office. And I remember taking mine off that day and pinning it on that little kid's lapel on his sport coat and everything. And all these kids are over there and they're touching it and trying to do all this stuff. And I thought, man, this is what the great things you can do when you're in this position. It's those little moments.
Well,
that matter.
My 12-year-old now, Harper, she was at several campaigns with me during your governor's campaign, and she has one of the little signs. And it's signed by you, and it's in her room still, And then my first state fair as commissioner, you gave her one of the
challenge coins.
Yeah. And she has that, so those are things that she still talks about today as she's grown up. And I think that getting our kids' feet wet in politics in the role, not the political role, but who they are, is so important at a young age, and what it means to make your voice heard at the state capitol. So and beyond. So thank you for letting me inspire my kids to know what's happening. So it's cool that these little touches that you've made on my life, and you keep doing it everywhere else you go.
Well, I hope when you look back on your career, yours, mine, anybody's, you hope it's about all the people you made a little difference in their life. Because the one thing you also learn in these positions, it's never about being the best of anything. It's not really who you are. It's not who I was. It's always trying to make people around me better. And I think that's what true leaders do. I think that's true people, whether it's in your private lives, whether it's in your church, whether it's in the schools, wherever might have you. Real leaders is never about trying to be the best. It's always about making people around you better. And that's who I think are the most successful people when you look around sometimes. And I hope when I look back, they'll kind of say, old Mike Parson was kind of that way.
I think so. So your next leadership role was lieutenant governor. When you didn't finish your state senator term.
No, I've never been able to hold a job. I told you.
Yeah. We're on repeat, the broken record. You couldn't finish the job, so you're like, there's other ones open.
Yep. That's how that one happened. That was a crazy ride. So. That whole year was, it's just upside down. You don't expect it, for a governor to resign, it was the second time in really our state's history that had ever happened in 200 years. So it was very unusual. And then I think you heard so many different things, is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? Now, don't get me wrong, as lieutenant governor, you always know that
there's
the position would be there's a chance, but you really think, not really. You know, and I did too. I mean, we had just built a new home in Bolivar and moved on the farm, and things were going good in life. You know, I was going to have a little sheriff's pension. I was going to be able to retire from the state a little bit and draw my Social Security and get to go home and live happily ever after and be lieutenant governor. Like, okay, it's not so terribly demanding. And that's kind of where
it didn't go the way you had planned. But before we get there, this was a statewide campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Probably the most important statewide campaign you ever put together.
Right.
Because it set the stage for the next several years.
It did.
You vowed to fight for veterans, seniors, and farmers.
Right.
I mean, the three hats that you've worn your whole career kind of fit into that mold. Would you say, and you talked about, and I've heard you say on the campaign trail, I don't remember it here specifically with lieutenant governor, but definitely governor, a positive campaign.
Right.
That was always your goal.
Yeah, right. It was always important to me to try to stay away from the negative stuff that people, because, you know, the reality of it is we all work a lifetime to try to build your honor and your integrity and your character. And for somebody to just pay millions of dollars to try to destroy someone is just not who I was. It wasn't something I wanted to do, you know, and I thought politics needed to change. And you know, for whatever reason, the lieutenant governor's story in itself, you know, you're the second highest office in the state of Missouri, and you come from that little town and those little humble beginnings I come from. But there's a much story that I haven't shared very much, and I'll share it now. But just a little over 9 years ago on Christmas Eve, after I'd won the election of lieutenant governor, I was in Cox South having open heart surgery, and I had 5 bypasses. So, and then it was, I didn't even know you have 5. I thought 3 was bad, but 5 was bad.
I know. I was like, quintuple?
Yeah. Well, all I know is 5.
Right. I know. I was like, okay, what's that?
Yeah. So
scary.
So I know it was 100% widowmaker was clogged. Most people don't survive. And I didn't have a heart attack. So thank goodness my wife, as she would tell you, and as she did, is she made me go to a doctor and says, hey, you need to do something. And
well, the emotional and physical strain of the campaign and all of that. This was before.
I was wore out. I was wore out, you know, and I was just tired. But anyhow, this pops up. So I kept thinking, you know, you always think, why me? You know, you always think it's going to be somebody else. And I thought, I just won an election. I didn't want people to think I was going to die right off the bat, to be right honest about it, before I ever took office.
It was scary.
And it was.
I remember.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, crap. Like, I felt like I knew you at that point, and I remember being like, oh, my gosh, this is scary.
And it was a scary time, and it was a scary time, but it was one of those moments driven in life, too, about faith. And you had to know that, okay, I'm prepared for this moment if something should come not the way I wanted. But I tell you this story, and I tell the people listening to this story, it was like, you know, 10 days after I left the hospital, I walked down the steps of the state capitol and took that oath of office and thought I had made it. I really had thought, my life has come together. Everything I've ever wanted, I'm done. I've completed it. My story is pretty well going to be over. You know, and I was going to get to go home. But I think the reality of it was what I didn't know is that God had another story. And I think now, going through what I went through had nothing to do with me walking down them steps to that state chapel. It really didn't. It was about preparing me for a higher calling.
Well, and the challenges in the future. And
I was going to have to be somewhat healthy to be able to undertake everything I undertook. And I do think there was a purpose for all that happened during that time. And I think that's why when I become governor, I was probably ready. Yeah. I was ready. I understood. But coming up to that, you know, coming to the governor, I think that was the craziest thing, though. Because, you know, the biggest news item, I think, of all the things I had becoming governor was where I was at when somebody called me. That's what
I've heard the story a dozen times.
You know, and it's like, man, I'm out in a barnyard. I'm out here sorting cattle. And I get the call from the colonel of the Highway Patrol, and Sandy called and told me, you know, that
that's
there was
interesting.
security.
Like, that's where the call came from.
It was. Yeah. And, you know, people have been saying for months and weeks, it's going to happen, it's not going to happen, it's going to happen.
But, you know, this was May?
Right before June.
Yeah.
Right first of June. Yeah.
So end of May, you're I mean, this whole state was abuzz. the whole
Oh, yeah.
state was in disarray of what was to happen, and the rumors were flying left and right, good, bad. I remember going, well, that's pretty cool. Because I knew that
I don't know
lieutenant.
that thought crossed my mind, but I'm glad it did yours.
Well,
I'm
no,
thinking,
I did.
what the
I
heck?
mean, like, it's enough time has passed now that I can say that. I mean, like, there's, we weren't sure what leadership we were going to get in Missouri agriculture then. And didn't hate for that to happen, but I'm glad it did for what we currently have now and where we're moving forward.
One of the things I was so proud about is coming from that ag background. I mean, the real ag background, not just hobbying, just kind of really doing it. And I think all of those things prepared me for that moment and for those challenges that were going to happen. And it all turned out, you could never wrote the script of what all happened during that time. But, I think all the experiences in life I had to use all of that to try to be the best governor I could be. And like you said, it was a pretty chaotic time. I mean, the office itself was chaotic. And is the only thing I could think is how do I make sure people in Missouri know it's going to be okay, that things are going to be stable, that we do it. And that was the number one thing I was trying to put, that, look, I'm not a rookie. I can figure this out. I got a little experience. And Missouri's much bigger than any one person. So we're going to come. And it's one of the things that I always said about governors, that it's never about the governor's last name. I mean, people kind of get hopped up about that when you're a governor and everything. But really, it's about the governor's office. Governor's office doesn't have a last name. If you look in that office, you look at the seals and everything that's in there. It doesn't have Parson, Nixon, Blunt, Carnahan, anybody like that on it. It's the office of governor. And that's who you're just protecting. Was at that time, I always felt like I was protecting that office. And that was my mission.
Well, you get that call, and who was the first person you called after you got that call?
Well, Teresa was the first person I called after that, because she was in Springfield shopping.
She wasn't even home.
She wasn't home, no.
Yeah.
And I called her and I said, hey, look, you got to come home. She says, what do you mean?
You wonder, who's died?
And I says, no, you got to go home. And then she was getting it, and she says, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. And I said, no, I'm not kidding you. You got to come home, and we need to have a quick chat because we're getting ready to go to Jeff City.
Well, because you as a family had said yes to all these other campaigns.
Right.
With the hope of, that end goal. You hadn't chosen, in the back of your head it's always possible, but it's a big ask. It's a big responsibility, a big shoes to fill, no matter who it is.
And Teresa had never been in that kind of limelight.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd kind of used to a little bit of that, but she had no idea. I remember she told me when she was in Springfield, she was looking for shoes, and she says, when she got ready to hang up, she says, "Well, I'm gonna get a pair of shoes," and you could tell she's trying to think things out. And I said, "Okay, that'll be fine. No hurry. Just come on back because we got to go back up there." So she came home and she don't have anything. That's unusual because she's a pretty good shopper.
Anything?
She's a pretty good shopper. And I said, did you get his shoes? No, I didn't get his shoes. I couldn't think about anything. Couldn't even think what color to get. I said, okay.
Or why she even needed the shoes.
Yeah. So anyhow, and then we had a choice. They said, we can send the patrol down, pick you up now. And I said, no, don't do that. I said, I'll meet you in Jeff City. Because I wanted that 2-hour drive for me and Teresa to be able to talk, and me be able to talk to her and explain, kind of how this was going to be, as much as I knew to explain to her what it was going to be.
What was that moment like?
It was very sobering. I mean, it was not like there's a lot of joy in it. It was like, okay, what's going to happen? What's our life going to be like? Does that mean we move to Jeff City? What does that mean for the family?
Yeah.
I mean, it was very, I want to say, intimate conversations we were having about, and I was trying to get her a little bit to understand when we get out up here, everything is going to change, and she says, what do you mean by that? I said, well, there's going to be a lot of media there for one, and they're going to be looking at everything you do and everything you say moving forward, and you got to understand that, and she says, oh my gosh, she says, I don't want to do that. I said, well, I don't think you're going to have much of a choice.
Too late.
Sorry, we're in this together. So, but anyhow, it was kind of things like that. And we talked about our family. And then, like I said, we just built a brand new house. We hadn't even got it quite done yet. So it was quite a time for us.
Well, you move into the second floor of the governor's mansion. Life has changed. You gave a message, that first message as governor. And do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I remember lots of it.
Yeah. What was your message that very first time that you'd been sworn in the office of governor, and you got to talk to us?
I think the thing is, it's going to be okay. Things are going to get stable. Missouri's going to continue forward, And that was the one message that I wanted people to understand. We got to keep moving forward, and we got to unite, and we got to be uniformed of who we are, because I firmly believe that Missourians, I just know they are in my heart, that, pretty good people and pretty tough, and so we'll go through some tough times. We always have.
So you get moved into the office, and you coming from we have a lean team, right? The lieutenant governor's office.
That was a sad day, but yeah.
Yeah. So you fill your staff, you get rolling. What do you remember being your first order of business as governor? Well,
actually, trying to fill some positions was the ultimate that we had to do, and thank goodness my chief of staff, Aaron Willard, was with me at the time. But you got to realize everybody left the governor's office. The vast majority. There's only like 3 or 4 people. So there was no general counsel.
Is that normal? Sorry to interrupt.
No.
You have
entire team
that you inherit.
You have 2 months to prepare, and you get to choose this. And there was like 4 people that was still there that was there. And I mean, they were all key, but there was no general counsel. There was no policy team. There was no budget people there. There was nobody there to say, here's where these are, and you had all the legislation had to be approved, all the bills had to be approved and signed off on, the budget had to be approved. And, you're talking 2 to 3 weeks, what took everybody a year to do, that we had to be able to do that. But again, I think you go back to the common sense approach. What is it you need to know if you're the governor? Who is the people that you need to know right off the bat? And who is that? Of all your cabinet members and everything. And it come out pretty well. It was your public safety and your SEMA. If something disaster happened or some emergency happened, you had to have connections with them. And we're talking about weekends, which there is no such thing as a weekend in the governor's world. But, you started trying to figure out what is the priorities of the people I need to know and make contact with in case something happens, is what we did. And so I was literally asking people when I took the oath of office on Friday, and I was calling people on Friday and Saturday and Sunday, asking them to quit their jobs. And they would say, well, yeah, we're excited. I'd like to come to work for you. When do you want me to come? And I would say, now.
Now.
Some of them come in on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll call your boss. I'll explain to him whatever I need to do, but I need some help. And people answer the call time and time again. So
it's a testament to the relationships you'd built in your career, but also, you'd basically filled every seat already in the Capitol, whether the state representative and the General Assembly to senator to lieutenant governor. And you had the connections, you knew the people, you knew the holes that needed to be filled. And that would have been rare and pretty scary if you had not had that expertise coming in like you did.
Yeah, I think that was a huge advantage. I knew the system. I knew who the people were. And again, you want to surround yourself that people believe what you believe, and the mission, I want to say. And we were just fortunate enough to be able to do that. And I'm telling you, I had some of the best people in the world that worked for me in the governor's office. I'll never be able to say enough for all they did for me during that 6.5 years. But it was a good time. It was good people there and good people in the right places. And things with everything.
Got things done.
Yeah, we got things done in the middle of civil unrest, COVID-19.
Yeah, well, when before you even ran for your second term, we can't begin to talk about all the initiatives, the bills, the issues that you tackled through that. Was there any one of those that stands out in that first term?
Oh, I think, of course, agriculture was a given because, I was always trying to figure out ways that we could do things there a little better. So that was always under my wing. But I think the 2 things that I just built my whole foundation on, the whole administration, was workforce development and infrastructure. And when I look back on it, and people driving down the road today probably be cussing all them orange cones out there and all that stuff. To me, I'm thinking, boy, that looks good. We're just building things all over the state. And when you talk about building airports and river ports and highway systems and bridges in rural Missouri and just all the things we accomplished in such a short period of time, and really understanding the workforce probably from a different angle than most people did,
right?
Because I didn't have a college degree.
Yeah.
but I knew how important job training was. So we put a huge emphasis on job training, on skills, on community colleges to make sure that those people coming out of school, maybe they're not going to be college material, but they're still going to need some skills. And it was something very important to me to try to make sure we made an impact on that. And it did, and it worked. And
yes, it did. And
we were recognized
it's being
nationally.
continued. And it's something that, as a daughter of a high school counselor, I learned it was instilled in my brain that we all learn differently, whether it's visual or auditory with our hands. We learn by doing. I go back to the FFA motto, learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve. Learning by doing was always how I learned. I needed to get my hands to feel, see, and touch it. And I think that, there's been times in history where we, 4-year degree is the only way to go when it comes to a future and being successful, lawyer, doctor, teach all those different things. But having opportunities for us all to choose that best fit.
I think that was one of the things that I was always excited about, And don't get me wrong, we're going to need architects, engineers, doctors. We're going to need all those type of people. But the vast majority of people, it doesn't mean you can't have a good job just because you don't have a college degree. And there was a point in our lives where we thought, everybody's got to go to college. You got to get a college degree of some kind.
Then you go in debt to do it.
Yeah, and you realize, okay, I just spent X number of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm making a $30,000, $35,000 job, and you're thinking, okay, that thing don't math out very well.
Yeah, and I don't like math, but I can't. That math doesn't math.
So anyhow, it was good to make those changes and everything. And of course, doing I-70, that's been talked about for decades around there, and doing that 6 lanes. It was just incredible the things that occurred during some of the most difficult times.
So when you made. Okay, well, I should ask the question. Was there any question that you wouldn't run for that second term as governor? Did you know from the beginning that you wanted to continue, or when did you make that decision?
I think you did. After you got into it and you realized you can make a difference, because that's one thing. It's one thing you want to try to think. Okay, if I'm just up here spinning my tires, I'm probably wasn't going to stay and put up all the put up with to do that. But all of a sudden you started seeing things. Hey, these things can happen. You can do these things, and you can get people to believe what you believe and make some real positive changes in lives. So it was I was kind of excited about it. And then, of course, then COVID rears up in the middle of a campaign, which I never dreamed about trying to do that. But forget about that. You still had to stay focused every day. You had to work every day. And there's a lot of things going on besides that in the state of Missouri that you had to keep focused on.
And that's what we kind of forget about, is that we have this, campaign to run, and Mike Parson works for Missouri, and you're campaigning, and there's this pandemic. Okay, so you're elected, you win, and you want to do all these things, but the pandemic is forefront, but everything else still has to take place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everything's going on every day. When the pandemic hit, we were at the office for 42 days straight. My whole team was. Because, I just said, look, there's all this stuff going on we still got to deal with, And, where everybody was scared and trying to make decisions during that time, it wasn't like we could go home. Everybody else did. There's a lot of people around there that did, but you just can't as governor.
And there were so many unknowns. Like, no one had answers. You could have made a decision this day, and the next day you're like, well, that was the wrong decision, because we were all at the whim of science and figuring out what was happening. And it was
nobody
a scary
had
time.
the answers.
Right.
When you go back, as what we did, one of the best decisions I ever made as governor during that time was I got all my senior people, some of the best that I could possibly put together. And I remember we all went out to SEMA and said, look, here's the map of Missouri, here's the border of Missouri. We're going to work on everything in. You're going to quit listening to what CDC says. We're going to quit listening to the East and the West Coast.
It was pretty
noisy.
We're
literally going to worry about Missourians, and that's all we're going to worry about as much as we could. And that's really when things kind of started changing around for us. But the decisions during that whole time were, dang if you do, dang if you You're just constantly going to get into it either way. And I think you go back and says, okay, what does things really mean, like the Constitution? What does it really mean? The Constitution doesn't say, okay, you get a pandemic come, things change. So you had to always go back, what is the best for the people of Missouri, and how do you do that for everybody? How do you make sure Kansas City, St. Louis, or Bolivar, Missouri makes decisions? So there was some tough decisions we made, but looking back on it, I think we made the right decisions for the most part on what we did.
None of us want to go back to that pandemic or anything to do with those few letters. But other more exciting things that you got to be a part of in office was the 200th anniversary of the great state of Missouri. What was it like?
No, it was an exciting time. It was great. And to learn so much history about our state that I didn't know. I mean, it was like every day was like a field trip, that I was going on. Go to some town and know the history of it. And then the mansion was also the 150th anniversary of the mansion.
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, it was. So you had that going on. The First Lady was doing some stuff with that, and we're celebrating 200 years. But it was, it was just one of those proud times that you got to bring so much together, and then the anniversary and the parades and all the little events that were going around. It was just, it was a fun time. And it was really one of those things that kind of, I guess, want to put a stamp of who we are as Missourians when you look at our history, how important that is, and how much our values have stayed the same, although times have changed. But those Missouri values have really stayed, and when you look at the history of it, where we was and where we've been to, and hopefully where we're going.
Absolutely, definitely where we're going.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. I'm excited for my kids and my grandkids, too. I really am, because I just know Missouri's going to be okay. Yeah.
Another 200 years. During that celebration, was there one moment that stuck out, one event that shined a light that you remember today?
Oh, I would have to say when they did the bicentennial parade, it was a big deal. When they did that, because all the communities and the towns and everybody was there
was a lot of unity.
Yeah, everybody was all about everybody. Everybody wanted everybody's float to be good, the bands, the parade, and how big that was.
How many times did you have ice cream during that year?
Oh, I have no idea.
There was ice cream everywhere we went.
Well, and everybody was making some kind of 200th anniversary cookie or some kind of dessert or some kind of food, had something stamped in it or something. But it was fun. It was fun going to a lot of the little towns. Of course, I'm a small town guy, but I think everybody really enjoyed that year with everything going on. It was a good year.
So how about them Chiefs?
Oh, well, we talked about that a long time. This year's been a little disappointing. But,
we won't talk about this year.
Yeah. So interesting story about the Chiefs. Of course, I've been a Chiefs fan for a long, long time. Even when they were 2-14 and all the years that we wasn't so good. But, of all the crazy things that happened when I was governor, the Kansas City Chiefs, turned it up like notches. So the one thing I like to brag about, and make no mistake about it, I like to brag about it. I like to take credit for it somehow, although I deserve none. But when I was governor, they were in the AFC Championship game every year I was governor. They won 3 Super Bowls when I was governor. And the one that really means a lot to me is that being the 57th governor, we were all talking about this one year. I said, how cool would it be? Some of my staff said, how cool would it be if the Chiefs would win the Super Bowl this year and they win the 57th Super Bowl? So my data guys start looking it up and see, is this even possible or has this ever happened before? And the reality of it is it never has and it never will. It's the only time that they win the 57th Super Bowl, and I was the 57th governor, those numbers will line up. So that was pretty special to me. And then just to be around when they were winning the St. Louis Blues, they won the Stanley Cup. I mean, I just got to do some cool stuff that was fun to go up there and be part of.
There's some cool staples in Missouri that are I don't mean landmarks, but global. Known globally across the United States, our sporting teams, our arch, and all those things. You got to be the poster child for all the reasons to come visit Missouri.
Well, the funnest thing, Jamie, when you go out is like if I go overseas, on our economic development trips, and you got to brag about your state. Man, there's nobody more prouder than I was. and I told people all the time when I go overseas to Europe or Japan or Australia, wherever it might be, I said, if every governor's not over here telling you their state's the best governor, then he's not a very good governor. But I'm here to tell you I'm the best of all them guys, and that's why you need to come to Missouri. And I would just start talking about our rivers. I'd talk about our airports. I'd talk about our family values. I'd just talk about work ethic. And I mean, every day I love talking about Missouri. And, when I got out of the Army and I stepped on the tarmac in Springfield when I come home, I said I'd never leave this state again because I love this state. And I truly did. And to get to be the governor of it and brag about your state all the time, it was a good day. And I met so many great people and fun people. And stars and.
Well, okay, let's talk about that. So outside of politics, no politics aside, what was your greatest moment in office?
Oh, I think getting to meet a lot of people I got to meet. Being at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
How many times?
Pretty dang
I
cool.
never thought I'd ever be at a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I just never did. And then somebody says, well, the governor should be there to represent the state and all that. So, okay, that sounds good to me.
Oh, darn.
I'll go if I got to go. So, and it was kind of good. And you get to talking smack with another governor. So, I mean, that was definitely a highlight. I think all the experience I had overseas, I think has to be at the top of that. When you go overseas and you do try to sell your state and you try to explain to them why you need to come here, and all of a sudden they come. And you realize, dang, that must have been a pretty good sales pitch I did, because they come to Missouri, and that happened time and time again. And then I think just sharing with people, I think one of the highlights, and Teresa I think would tell you the same thing, living in the mansion. Now, I mean, whoever thinks you're going to live in a mansion? I mean, seriously. I mean, where I come from, no. But to be part of history, to live in that and bring your friends there, to bring people there that had never been there before.
So beautiful.
The
portraits.
For somebody to walk in your office that's never been in your office before, I mean, walking in the governor's office never gets old. You're still that kid inside you says, dang, this is impressive. This is kind of fun, And I think to share that with people had to be the highlight of my whole time as governor, is just letting people have an inside look into what life was like. To be that. And again, how you become humble is just remember back on that little old farm and that 2-story farmhouse on a rock foundation and my mom and dad and how it all started, to think, man, look where I'm at today, and to realize how fortunate I've been, how blessed I've been to be there. That was so there's a lot of good times in there, a lot of fun times.
Your faith has been something that you spoke openly about. Whether in writing or in speeches from a podium, sitting here today. You talked about your parents. If the church door was open,
oh yeah,
you were there. And I mean, that's how I was raised. If the church was open, we were there.
Yeah.
And that's how, raising my kids. Tell me about what your faith has meant to you, how you've continued that faith journey with your kids, but also, as a leader of the state, and how hard it's been but also what that faith has brought you to that finish line, or how it's brought you to that finish line.
Well, first of all, let me say this. I do not think you can be an effective leader in whatever position you're in. I don't care whether it's Washington, D.C. or the state of Missouri. You can't be an effective leader if you don't understand faith, if you don't have faith. And I mean, you got to be a believer and you got to be a follower. I do believe that. And I think from day one, when I went to church and I didn't want to go to church, and I fought, at a certain time, and all these things you go through as a young person, and my dad and mom were just every Sunday, every constant in your life, and you listened and you learned biblical stories, and you learned more about what life journey would be like. And then all of a sudden, in a roundabout way, you've lived a lot of those journeys that you've read about that has prepared you to be a leader. And I think the first call I made, actually, when I became governor, was my Sunday school class. And I asked them to come up, and says, hey, I've got a big job I got to do, and I got to figure out how I'm going to do this. And I think I've told people many times when I found out I was going to be governor and they come up, I said, look, if you don't think you're going to question God sometimes, we don't always know He's always right. But I said, you're going to question Him from time to time. I was questioning Him. I was saying, you sure you got this right? I mean, am I prepared for this? And I think that's when you realize that you don't always have to walk alone. And there's so many decisions I had to make it so many times as governor, that some Sunday school class that I never heard of in my life would send me a letter and say, I'm praying for the decisions you have to make today. And it wouldn't be like tomorrow or general. And it was sometimes some of the toughest decisions I had to make. And that happened time and time again, or somebody would catch me out on the campaign trail or on my official duties and says, hey, we're praying for you. And all those little things that they were very sincere about it. And I, again, when you're the governor, if I could let everybody sit in that chair for a little while, I would want them to have the feeling, okay, you sat in the chair, but nobody's got the answer. Now, what are you going to do? That's the one thing I think that if there was something I could say is, what would you do when you don't know? And there's nobody there to tell you. And that's when your faith will come to play. And I guarantee you, everything you've learned in your life is how you'll make that decision when that day comes. And it'll come more than you want it to come when you're governor, because they're hard decisions, they're tough decisions, and they affect people's lives. But you have to make them. There's no easy way out.
You don't have to walk alone. That's impactful.
Well,
Life after office.
no, it's great. It's great. Don't anybody feel sorry for me, because it's good.
Grandkids, great-grandkids.
Oh, yeah.
Getting special time now.
All the little things you get to do. Yeah. Grandkid comes by and you just stop doing what you're doing and you kind of play and do whatever it is to do. People ask me all the time if I miss it, to the day-by-day grind, and I don't at all. I really don't. I feel like I was supposed to be there for that time, and it was time for me to go home in my life and in my career. It was all right to do that. I tell you what I do miss, though, is I miss the people. I miss the people I was around every day. I had a wonderful staff. I had so many people I met. There were such great people, and I miss that part of it. But as far as the day-by-day grind, no way. And then, just like your show, the segment in your show, driving through that farm gate every day, and I get to drive through my little cattle guard and be in my barn and my buildings and that way of life. I just feel, man, I'm just so fortunate, so blessed, and I'm enjoying it. It's good to be home. It just feels so right, and I enjoy it. I enjoy it every day. I get up and I'm still doing something. And I'm not a guy that likes to. I can't sit around and drink coffee for a couple hours or something. I'm just not geared that way. My wife said, you need to just sit down and do it. But I mean, when I get up in the morning, I'm trying to find something to do and doing things. And I've joined there is a couple of things I've took on.
Okay.
I'm actually assistant convoy of hope, which I really like them and who they are.
What an awesome organization. And we need to have them in here.
It would be great. It would be great because they're building a new manufacturing agriculture center. And that's kind of what I'm doing, is giving them a little advice on agriculture and all over the world. And so that's been kind of fun. That's kind of more of a cause or a purpose I'm doing. And, I've actually accepted a director's position on the board of directors at College of the Ozarks. And just because my granddaughters graduated down there, but I'm just doing things I want to do. But the first year out, I didn't do much. I mean, honestly, I kept a low profile until you talked me into coming up here today. So
I know.
We'll see how talented you are and see how good you make this look.
Well, heck, the producer behind the mic's going to have to work some magic, because we could talk forever.
Yeah,
well,
right.
I thank you for sharing your story and for being such an inspiration for me personally, for people across the state. Another opportunity you gave me was I been passionate about the Missouri State Fair my whole life, and I can't sit down with you and not say thank you about that. Been there. I've missed 2 state fairs, and one of them is because I was having a baby. She was an August baby. But you allowed me to serve on one of the board and commissions, and this commission was the Missouri State Fair Commission. And so still getting to hold that position. Why was the state fair why was it on your heart as an office, as governor?
Gosh. I remember going to state fair with my mom and dad when we couldn't afford to go to a state fair. I mean, we didn't buy anything. We picnicked on the grounds. We would go out there and we'd pay to go in, but you didn't buy anything when you was there as a kid. But I just remember how fascinating it was, how big it was. It was bigger than life, and all the livestock and all the people showing. And I thought, man, that would be a dream come true to be out there and win a ribbon, and who are all these people? And I never got to do those things, but the point of it is the state fair is the heart and soul of our showcase. Once a year, we really get to show who we are at the state fair. So it's always been something. I've been so fortunate having it in my senatorial district. So it's like That's a kid to be able to do stuff, and then as governor, and to point people on the board, on the commission, just like you said a while ago. I didn't pick you because of any particular reason other than I knew you'd do a good job, and I wanted people that believe like I believed and make that a special occasion, because you make memories out of the state fair. I mean, for a lot of people, you'll never even know. And that's why I was such an advocate for the state fair and who they are and just the people up there. I mean, the one thing I always look forward to in the governor's office, I will tell you, every year was the state fair, getting to go up there to the ham breakfast and to be the speaker. You know how many times I've been to the state fair and I've listened to governor speak, and I thought, man, that's got to be kind of cool. That's got to be kind of
Exactly.
awesome.
Tough crowd, though, at that place. There's lots of people.
It's a fun day, though. But then all of a sudden, you're the one up there making the speech. And again, just those kind of things in life. A quick story about the state fair. I got talking to my chief of staff. So he could care less about the state fair. I'll just tell you, I don't think he'll mind me saying that. But I took him with me my first year because he wanted to go and he wanted to be by my side and all this stuff. So he goes, and he's got a tie on, a white shirt. He's got this name badge of the state ID.
He wore a tie to the fair?
And cufflinks. And he's walking around out there on a phone. And all of a sudden, I'm thinking, every vendor in here is going to start taking off, thinking he's a food inspector or something like that out there. So I said, you can't go no more. So I never did let him go to the state fair again after that time.
You should have given the memo. You wear tennis shoes,
no, you're not going.
Yeah.
You're not going. Just stay at the office, do what you do best. You don't be at the state fair.
Well, I think that I don't think there was very many governors in the history that have spent more time at the Missouri State Fair than you. Okay. I laugh at the times where the governor's back again today. He just wants to walk around and just be a fair goer. And, and I think of that, the heart and soul, and it's you said a showcase of Missouri economy, of Missouri agriculture, of tourism and industry and history. And we are one of the very few state fairs in the state of Missouri that is still centered around agriculture. Right. And a testament to our leadership and a testament to you and letting us share our story there. So thank you.
Well, we want to keep that story going. So that's your job now. It's not my job no more. That's your job. That's why I put you there. Good.
Well, Governor, one last question I like to ask everybody.
Okay.
What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Oh, I'd tell myself to do a lot of things different, but I would say live the life who you are. Don't be afraid of things, even the mistakes you've made. Don't run from them because they're a part of who you are, and that's what'll build your character. And I would just say be who you are. Treat people right. You know the difference between right and wrong. Do the right things and have fun. Enjoy life. I mean, enjoy what you do. And I'm a firm believer is set your goals and meet them. They may change a little bit, but you can still go anywhere you want to go and do all the things you want to do. And who knows? You may be some kid out there that thinks what's in store for me, and you may be the next governor. Who knows? Well,
thank you, 57th governor of Missouri. That tattoo.
I got
you got to show the tattoo.
I got to show it off. Yeah, this is the one that got more media attention than anything I've done when I was governor. But there it is.
There it is. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks for joining me on another episode of Beyond the Gate. If you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. New episodes drop every other Wednesday. For more content, follow Around the Ozarks and Beyond the Gate on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to the daily newsletter at AroundTheOzarks.com. Join us next time for more stories of grit, growth, and the spirit of rural life.